On the evening of May 10th, 1849, the renowned Shakespearean actor William Macready was backstage at the Astor Opera House in New York City. While rehearsing his lines for Macbeth, Macready was oblivious to the ominous gathering just outside. Those who congregated weren't eager fans, but discontented protestors, their voices resonating like an ill-omened chorus in the early evening air. By 7:30 p.m., their rallying cry of "Shall Americans or English rule this city?" echoed through the streets, the fury and angst palpable. Not even the theater walls could shut out this unwelcome soundtrack, compelling Macready to convert his dramatic soliloquy into an unanticipated pantomime. Among the crowd was Ned Buntline, a vociferous supporter of American actor Edwin Forrest, and a vehement opponent of Macready, who did everything in his power to fuel the hatred and rivalry between Macready and Edwin Forrest. Buntline, through his rivalry, orchestrated a battalion of rioters, launching an onslaught on the theater with stones and even attempts at arson. At 9:15 p.m., the curtain fell, but the riot raged on, escalating to a point where the authorities feared they had lost control of the city, calling in the military. Warnings were issued, battles ensued, and ultimately, the dreaded order was given: shoot to kill. The defiant chants of rioters morphed into screams and cries, echoing the terror of a night that claimed the lives of many, bystanders included. And thus, the legend of Macbeth's curse found fresh fuel for its ominous flame. How did we get here? Why was Macready, a mere actor, the target of such hostility in America? Was the rivalry between Macready and Forrest just an isolated incident, or a direct cause of the riot? Is there truth to the cursed tales of Macbeth, doomed to incite disaster? Will my audacious new adult video, Redhead takes whole banana down their throat, hit the million view milestone? Join us today on Historical Quarrels as we unravel these queries and more. So, in the immortal words of the bard, friends, Romans, countrymen, lend me your ears as we delve into this tumultuous chapter in American history. Welcome back to Historical Quarrels. I'm excited that you are here listening to this show. I love that you're here. I love it so fucking much. Now, due to legal reasons, I've been advised to warn people at the beginning that this show is very NSFW. I will say some no-no words. I will make jokes about horrible, god-awful, terrible things. And I will 100% make some shit up and derail the story from time to time. So be prepared for that. Don't come in here thinking, I can show this to grandma. Your grandma will listen to this and have a heart attack unless she's fucking cool. Now, as I mentioned at the end of my last episode, the format and the way I present these quarrels is changing with this episode. So, kind of want to go over that a little bit, so that way you guys are prepared and not expecting what I usually do. Essentially what I'm changing is how the main chunk of these stories are presented. Instead of following the event and doing an overview of those involved, we will be following 1 to 2 of the key players' life story and how they impacted and shaped the events that would lead to the quarrel. And then we'll go over how the quarrel went and its impact on them. Before that, I will briefly go over the history of the area and talk about events that happened before the people who we're going over were born that would cause a cultural impact in their area. After the life stories are done and the impacts on the players are done, I will go over how the quarrel impacted society or the area as a whole and any interesting changes that are caused by it. After that, we'll go to the end of the show, where I usually give my thoughts on the subject and solicit my adult video page, TwinkieTyler6969. We are almost up to 1 million subscribers, and I know you guys can all get us there. Let's do it, guys. With that being said, Let's dive first into the history of the Astor Opera House and how Americans, especially those in New York, viewed Shakespearean theater and how stage actors back then were the true progenitors of the modern Hollywood movie star. New York and its people pre-1849 were marred by constant conflict with the British and the aristocracy. In 1765, animosity truly began the proverbial boiling with the Stamp Act riots. The boiling finally spilled over and erupted into an all-out war, a war that was so rebellious, they said it was revolutionary. It's a dad joke. The Revolutionary War may have formally ended in 1783, but in the hearts and minds of many Americans, it merely transitioned into a Cold War of lingering resentment and suspicion. Everybody that was British was up to something, even though they themselves were technically British for a long time. I mean, at that point, they had cultural differences and whatever. Who cares? I mean, they're all from England, besides, the people that originally lived in America, who they killed and slaughtered. But that's not the quarrel we're talking about today. We're talking about the quarrel between British and Americans. British rule had been ousted, but the memory of the British oppression remained seared into the American consciousness. Much like how the memory of the Seahawks winning the Super Bowl is seared into everyone from Washington's brain. And we can't move on from the glory days because we were the 12th man and we were fucking robbed by Tommy McBall Deflator Brady. Why the hell didn't Lynch get that fucking ball? We had it, dude. Despite the 4 motherfucking touchdowns, we could have still won. It would have been 2 in a fucking goddamn row, but no. Fucking Lynch didn't get the ball. Brady had to throw 4 touchdowns. God. Still upset. And as you can tell, I'm still not over a game that happened 8 years ago. So I'm sure you can see why New Yorkers weren't over a literal war they went through, and they taught their kids not to trust the British, much like how I teach my kids not to trust the Patriots, really Tommy McBall Deflator Brady. In the years that followed, the newly formed United States grappled with its identity, striving to differentiate itself from the English influence while still holding on to aspects of its cultural roots. Nowhere was this identity crisis more pronounced than in the realm of the arts, particularly theater. In the early years of the American Republic, theater was primarily an entertainment form for the wealthy elite, largely imitative of European styles. However, as the country grew, so did its theatrical landscape. American theater started to diversify, become more democratic, reaching a broader audience that included not just the upper class, but also middle and working class citizens. For the working man, like we do today with shows like Joe Dirt and other blue-collar comedies. During the early 19th century, theaters began to spring up in many American cities. Some, like the Park Theater in New York City, were grand, opulent establishments that catered to the wealthy elite. Others, like the Bowery Theater, also in New York, catered to the working class. There was an increasing focus on homegrown talent. Got to get those homegrown American boys. And with American playwrights and actors gaining recognition alongside their European counterparts. In terms of content, many early American plays were melodramas, a genre imported from Europe that was popular for its exaggerated characters and moral simplicity. However, Shakespeare's works were particularly beloved, performed frequently, and admired for their complex characters and profound themes. And even today in modern times, Shakespeare's works are still admired for just how great they are. I mean, they've basically been turned into every modern movie out there that's been good has essentially just been a copy of some of Shakespeare's works. And one can argue Shakespeare's works were also a copy of like other works or other shows he may have read or stolen. But again, that's neither here nor there. So as Shakespeare's homeland, Britain held the very perceived authority on the interpretation and performance of his works. However, the burgeoning American theater sought to break free from the English shadow and create its own unique interpretations of the bard's works. At the same point in time, many stage actors began to enjoy celebrity status akin to that of modern Hollywood stars. Audiences flocked to theaters, not just to see the play, but to see their favorite actors perform. It is my belief that this mindset led to the eventual downfall of our modern media and why we are presented with so much goddamn slop for our entertainment today. You know, like Jack and Jill. The movie was fucking awful, but it still made $149 million goddamn dollars because Adam fucking Sandler was in it. So, business people see shit like that and they're like, yeah, that's a good investment because they can literally double their goddamn money off of nothing. They don't care if it's good or not, only if it sells. And actors will sell you your films. Probably because of this period. This period really saw the rise of the star system, where famous actors would travel from New York theater to theater, often across national borders, performing in a variety of roles and enjoy a variety of privileges and delicacies such as coca leaves from Peru, where they would typically grind the leaf up into a powder and sniff bits of it right before a performance to give them a bit of an extra edge while performing. One of the earliest examples of this kind of theater superstar was David Garrick, an English actor, playwright, and theater manager in the 18th century. Garrick was renowned for his expressive, naturalistic acting style, which was a break from the formal, declamatory style common at the time. His performances attracted large audiences, and he became a significant cultural figure, with his likeness appearing in paintings and prints. His fame was so far-reaching that he eventually fell victim to, and caused the creation of, the actor's number one enemy: tabloids and TMZ-esque news outlets. Here's a fascinating news article I found that is oddly similar to how some tabloids present information today.
The rise and fall of David Garrick, a revelation most shocking. In a turn of events that has left the public most aghast, the renowned Mr. David Garrick, a name held high within the halls of our esteemed theater circles, has been embroiled in a scandal of the most deplorable nature. Late evening, last Tuesday, Mr. Garrick was observed by multiple parties of high standing within our society, partaking in what has been delicately described as a most unusual ritual, involving an assortment of leaves reportedly procured from the far-off lands of Peru. These leaves, whispered to be of exotic origin, are known to be favored by the indigenous peoples of the South American continent for their capacity to invigorate the body and quicken the mind. However, their consumption has been met with disapproval from more learned circles of our society, with moralists condemning their use as an illicit stimulant. Upon inquiry, Mr. Garrick, having first said that it wasn't his and he was just holding it for a friend, admitted to partaking of these leaves on occasion, but insisted that he did so for therapeutic purposes only. It is a humble aid to maintain my energies through the demands of my profession, claimed Mr. Garrick, though many are now questioning the veracity of such a claim. In the wake of these revelations, there has been a swell of consternation amongst theatergoers and Garrick's ardent admirers alike. Questions are being raised about the very nature of his famed performances. Were they a result of raw talent and skill, or did they owe their vitality to these mysterious Peruvian leaves? As this scandal unfolds, the line between natural thespian prowess and unnatural stimulation becomes increasingly blurred. This disheartening revelation has cast a shadow upon the illustrious career of Mr. David Garrick, and has led many to ponder the true cost of fame. It remains to be seen what repercussions this scandal will have on the career of one of our era's most celebrated stage actors, and indeed, on the very face of theater itself. As we await further developments, one thing remains certain: the curtain has not yet fallen on this drama.
So, in addition to David Garrick, there is also Sarah Siddons, who is another notable figure, known for her powerful performances in tragic roles, particularly as Lady Macbeth. Siddons's performances were often so affecting that the audience members were known to faint. She was one of the most famous actors of her time, and her fame extended beyond the stage, with her personal life and fashion choices being followed and emulated by fans. Again, straight up the progenitors of modern Hollywood, completely. Also, that whole news article was BS, by the way. I really don't need people quoting this show as like a source and using that bit in a research paper. And then I'll get an email from someone saying, why the hell would you lie about this? You son of a, just yada, yada, yada. That being said, David was very energized on stage, so it wouldn't be, too far-fetched to presume he would use some sort of stimulant or something to help him get ready. Maybe not cocaine from Peru, is essentially what I was saying. But in America, the actor George Frederick Cook was one of the first international stars to tour the country in the early 19th century. His performances were highly anticipated events, and he enjoyed considerable popularity, despite a reputation for heavy drinking. These actors laid the groundwork for the level of stardom that Edwin Forrest and William Macready would later achieve. They were among the first to demonstrate that an actor could become a major cultural figure. Their performances anticipated and discussed by fans, and their personal lives the subject of public interest and speculation. They were indeed the progenitors of modern Hollywood stars. In addition to the theater and rise of stage superstars, the early 19th century in America was a time of significant economic change. The Industrial Revolution was transforming the economy, leading to the rapid growth of cities and creating new wealth. However, this economic transformation also led to increasing social inequality. The growing divide between the rich and the poor became a significant source of tension amongst people. The aristocracy, comprising the wealthy elite, and the old money families held significant power and influence. They often had strong ties to Europe, and particularly Britain, in terms of culture, education, and often lineage. Their lifestyle was heavily influenced by European high culture, including theater, arts, and literature. On the other hand, the working class was expanding, consisting of laborers, immigrants, and the urban poor. This group was striving for recognition and upward mobility, and in an economy that was increasingly industrial and capitalist. A middle class was also emerging, consisting of entrepreneurs, professionals, and skilled workers who had benefited from the economic transformations. The middle class aspired to the cultural sophistication of the aristocracy, yet they also identified with the democratic values of the working class. These socioeconomic shifts led to increasing class consciousness and tension. The aristocracy was often seen as looking down upon the lower classes and being out of touch with their struggles. Conversely, the working class and the rising middle class began to resent the aristocracy's wealth, power, and perceived cultural snobbery. The stage was thus set for a cultural clash, one that would play out very dramatically in the rivalry between two leading actors of the era, the British thespian William Macready, who again was favored by the upper class and elites, and American star Edwin Forrest, who was beloved of the working class and burgeoning middle class. So, let's begin our story by taking a look at the lives of these two and how they would parallel and differ from one another until they met and began their squabbling. On March 3rd, 1793, William Macready was born in London, England, into a family deeply involved in theater. His father was a successful theater manager, and in March of 1803, William was sent away to rugby school. This was done because William's father, not unlike many fathers, actually hated the arts and loathed the man he had become, and the people that he worked with. So he figured if he sent his son to a school that had more of a focus on physical activity and being outside getting all sweaty and hot with a bunch of boys, he'd not go down the same path that he did. Little did he know that this would only further push his son into the arts, as his son realized he didn't like being hot and sweaty with other dudes. The plan for William was to be educated for a more respectable profession than the stage. And while Macready was in school and his father began to sink into debt, in the New World, the U.S. was about to brag about all of its money it was making and make a big old purchase that would change its course forever and shape the lives of many of its citizens. Also in 1803, the U.S. would acquire Louisiana and other territories from France, also known as the Louisiana Purchase. This would double the size of the nation and prompted significant westward expansion. This played a crucial role in shaping the country's identity and providing new opportunities, including the expansion of theater and arts in its new territories. And in just 3 years, a man who would eventually take advantage of this expansion would be born. On March 9th of 1806, in a land very far away from Louisiana, better known as Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, Edwin Forrest was born into humble beginnings to his Scottish-Irish parents. His father was a pimp, and Edwin's mother was Billy 2 times Forrest's bottom bitch. Billy 2 times being Edwin's dad, who is known to pop out 7 to 9 tricks a night for $1.50 per nut inside of her. Her nickname was Becca Brownfingers, who was known to make men bust a nut quick by shoving 1 or sometimes 4 fingers up her clients' assholes, allowing her to turn as many tricks per night as she did. Billy would try to convert Edwin into the game later on in his life, but Billy would end up getting killed one night when Edwin was 13, after a trick got a little upset that Becca Brownfingers did her thing that she was, very well known for, and tried attacking Becca. But Billy intervened, and unfortunately for Billy, he was not a strong man, and so the trick shoved his fist up Billy's ass so far that he was able to use him as a puppet, and made 13-year-old Edwin watch as he put on a 3-act comedic performance, puppet performance. Edwin would later remark that the performance was fine, but he forgot about the subtlety of the art of comedy, and was too involved in the mimicry of my father's voice. Overall, I'd give the performance a 6 out of 10, and would love to see him workshop the show more and improve upon it. So, that's pretty good praise that a 13-year-old gave him. Or, none of that insanity happened, and I just had fun making that absurdity up. Because in all reality, William Forrest worked often as a cooper or a baler maker. Definitely not as interesting as Pimp, but whatever. And Rebecca Forrest was a housewife, and didn't have the stinkiest fingers in all of Pennsylvania. Also less interesting, but, that so is with most people's lives. Forrest's early years are spent in poverty. Early on in Forrest's life, both of his parents would encourage him to recite speeches from Shakespeare in front of guests at home, which fostered his love for drama and acting. Every now and then, Edwin was known to spout random insults at people, including quotes from Shakespeare's plays. He once called an ex-girlfriend a most notable coward, an infinite and endless liar, an hourly promise breaker, the owner of no one good quality. After he caught her shoving her fingers up his buddy Dickin' Donnie Dickens' ass while he was dicking her down. All right, I'll stop with the asshole fingering breakaways now. It's just fun for me. Well, anyways, while Edwin was entertaining guests across the world, William was getting ready for his first show. And in 1810, Macready makes his debut on stage at Birmingham at the age of 17. He performed Romeo in Romeo and Juliet. His father, William Macready, the elder, due to some financial debt, was forced to pull his son out of rugby and caved in to his boy's dreams of being an actor. And it was under his management that the younger Macready made his debut, which I am sure pissed off a lot of actors who were like, oh, of course the son gets Romeo. Talent and tenure apparently don't matter. She just passed a law that doesn't let you hire your children, you goddamn bastards. And that is how laws against nepotism started. Because some actors got really, really jealous that they didn't get a role. And clearly, they were all high schoolers back then who were just upset about what role they got. Obviously joking, but I can see how upset that would make any actors in the current group. Just be like, of course his son gets Romeo. Why wouldn't he? Contemporary reports suggest that Macready's first performance was met with great success. Audiences were struck by his emotional depth and naturalistic style, both of which set him apart from the more bombastic and stylized acting that was common during that period. I was able to find an article from an Observer back then written by Sir Richard Johnston Dickinson III. The article is entitled, An Ode to the Divine Debut of Master Macready, as observed from my opulent box at the Theatre Royal. Upon venturing to our quaint little Theatre Royal, one is often struck with a tepid trickle of theatrical trifles, oh so pedestrian in their delivery. However, this humble observer was most agreeably discombobulated by the emotive exhibition of the nascent starlet, Master Macready, who graced the stage as Romeo in the beloved tragedy of the bards, Romeo and Juliet. The son of our well-regarded manager, Mr. Macready the elder, bounded onto the boards with an intensity that was palpable from the first row to the last. And most certainly in my own privileged position as in the aristocratic box, from which the vantage point I tend to survey the proceedings with a practiced, discriminating eye. Oh, but how could one discriminate against such a visage? Master Macready, with his dark, tousled locks, framing a countenance so deeply etched with melancholy and ardor, seemed not a boy from Birmingham, but Verona's most ill-fated lover himself. Truly, his interpretation of the star-crossed Romeo was a sight to behold, even though one might admit that the finer details of the bard's poetry might have floated off into the ether. The intricacies of love and death do tend to get a bit repetitive, do they not? One could not help but remain utterly captivated by the spectacle of Master Macready himself. His every movement, every gesture, every turn of his handsome head had me, and dare I say, all in the auditorium, absolutely spellbound. His anguished cries, his passionate pleas, well, they must have been quite affecting for those who had a penchant for such dramatics. However, for this particular observer, it was the magnetic charm, the raw and untamed beauty of the young thespian that provided this evening's most sublime entertainment. A star has indeed been born on our humble stage, and I can only anticipate with great excitement the future spectacles to which Master Macready will no doubt treat us. In sum, should you seek a night of true theatrical delight, one might suggest you pay less heed to the script at hand and instead surrender yourself to the enchanting allure of our new city's newest sensation. Bravo, Master Macready, bravo! This promising start laid the groundwork for a career that would see Macready become one of the most famous and respected actors of his generation. Despite that review essentially saying he didn't listen to any of what Macready did and was still just focused on his looks, he was actually a very talented actor. It is important to note, however, that Macready's early years as an actor were not without challenges. His father's death in 1813 left him in charge of the family's debt-ridden theater company, a responsibility that put significant strain on his financial resources and personal relationships. Despite these setbacks, Macready continued to refine his craft. And while Macready was bursting onto the stage, people were bursting with rage in America and trying to figure out where the hell America began and British Canada ended. Because in 1812 through 1815, the conflict between the US and Britain, known as the War of 1812, although it ended in a stalemate, would end up reinforcing American nationalism and the sense of distinct American identity. This sentiment likely influenced this rivalry to come between Forrest and Macready later on in life. While that was going on, about a year after the war ended, Macready was able to make his London debut at the Covent Garden in the role of Orestes in The Distressed Mother, and is praised for his emotional depth and ability to, I guess, it was more of an ability to display energy, almost like how David Garrick was. He was able to really just add more depth to the characters than they had seen before. And this led to a bunch of the aristocrats wanting him to act in their theater troupe or to come perform in this area, and he would get, it helped him get out of financial debt. And while he was doing that for a few years, in 1818, at the age of 12, Forrest was able to make his debut on the stage at the Walnut Street Theater in Philadelphia. His acting ability is quickly noticed, and he begins his career in earnest. He's able to find an instructor, he's able to get more notoriety, and is able to start really pursuing this career. At the same time, in 1818, the US and Britain agreed on the 49th parallel as the boundary between the US and Canada from the Lake of the Woods to the Rocky Mountains. That's right, it took 3 years after the War of 1812 ended to really define that. This settled tensions, but also solidified the concept of two separate and distinct nations and cultures that would be very important later. And then 2 years later, at age 14, Forrest gains popularity performing in regional theaters throughout the U.S. It should also be noted that in the early 19th century, significant events, both in America and across the Atlantic, were setting the stage for a rivalry that would ignite passions and spark a riot eventually. In 1820, on the British side of the Atlantic, William Macready assumed the management of the Covent Garden Theatre, where he embarked on a mission to refine and enhance the quality of British theatre. His productions became celebrated for their painstaking attention to detail and fidelity to historical accuracy, laying a foundation for highbrow theatrical culture that would eventually clash with American sensibilities. Meanwhile, on American soil, the same year saw the enactment of the Missouri Compromise. This critical act kept a delicate balance between the slave and free states, deferring the eruption of sectional conflict for another 3 decades. The compromise not only represented the escalating tensions surrounding slavery, but also shaped the audiences and societal context in which Forrest and Macready would perform. It subtly but surely influenced the values, perspectives, and prejudices of theatergoers in a rapidly changing nation. It would change how they decide to perform Othello, it would change how they decide to perform X show, and influence how people perceived it, with British sensibilities not understanding the American culture at the time because of this conflict going on between slave and free states. Only 5 years later, in 1825, a significant development transformed America's cultural landscape: the completion of the Erie Canal. This marvel of engineering linked the Great Lakes with the Atlantic Ocean via the Hudson River, paving the way for easier travel and transportation, including touring theater troupes. It fueled the growth of New York City as a significant cultural hub and theater destination. The convergence of transatlantic theatrical cultures, societal tensions, and infrastructural advancements created a potent mix, setting the scene for the famed Forrest-Macready rivalry that was to come. In 1826, just a year after the Erie's completion, at the age of 20, Forrest has his breakthrough role in Othello at the Bowery Theater in New York, which catapults him to national fame and is partially in thanks to the canal making New York this hub for everyone to come to. Without it, Forrest may have never gotten as much fame as he did with this show. It was so famous that anybody who was anybody had something to say about it, especially the working class who wrote things like A Night to Remember by Bobby Buckets O'Sullivan, Street Peddler.
Tell you what, folks, the Bowery Theater ain't ever seen a night when Forrest took the stage. The man's got talent that reaches all the way back to the cheap seats. Made me feel like a king for a night. And I'm just a guy who sells apples and pears. His Othello was the real deal, and ain't no high-ball brick could do it better.
There was also another quote called Forrest Shines Bright by Mary Ann, the seamstress. She said, "Never been much for the theater. Meat always seemed like a thing for toffs, but Forrest, the lad's got a way of making Shakespeare feel like he's one of us. Watched him on Othello at the Bowery, and I swear I felt every word he spoke in me hot. Can't wait to see him again." There's a few others, but most notably, this is where Ned Buntline makes his first appearance. I was able to scrounge up an old journal entry that supposedly belonged to Ned, who was 5 at the time of writing this, and I have to say, for a 5-year-old, he was an incredibly eloquent writer. Kind of makes sense why he got into it later in life. While reading about Ned, I found out he was a bit of a weird kid who had an unnaturally deep voice. Really, I like to try and mimic the voice to get you guys a little more involved. So I'm going to try and read the way that the voice was described in the paper that I found.
Today I had the pleasure to view one Mr. Edwin Forrest, a fine specimen of American grit and talent. He stirs the soul and quickens the pulse in ways that I dare say no other actor has ever done before. I found myself in the enchanting company of his talent at the Bowery Theater, watching him perform Othello. His performance was nothing short of thrilling. The man has a magnetism about him, a vigor that reaches out and grabs a hold of you. His voice, strong and resonant, paints a picture of the tragedy that is Othello in vivid, blood-red hues. But it's not just his voice, no sir. It's the whole of him, the fire in his eyes, the clench of his jaw, the sinewy play of muscle beneath his clothes. As he moves across the stage, you can almost feel the heat of him, the raw energy that he pours off him like waves from a raging furnace. It's a sensation that stirs the blood and sets the heart racing. And when he takes his bow, the applause rings out, hearty and true. But it's not enough. No amount of clapping could truly convey the depth of his feeling. His performance evokes. You find yourself wishing you could get closer, understand him better, perhaps even become a part of him. But alas, the curtain falls, and we are left only with the memory of his performance and the promise of his return. So we wait with bated breath and eager anticipation for the next time we can bask in the glow of his extraordinary talent. Until then, Mr. Forrest, I remain, as always, your most ardent admirer, Ned Buntline.
Well, that was creepy as shit. But, you know, that's Ned. Good old fucking Ned. Anyways, while that was happening, and Forrest's reputation and fame would just keep growing and growing to a more wide-reaching audience that would grab the upper class by its head and force it to bear witness to its star rising from the dirt. Across the ocean, wedding bells could be heard. And in 1828, William Macready marries Catherine Frances Atkins. And little known fact, a paper known as the London Luminary back then was the progenitor of future tabloids like People magazine or TMZ. And they would report on people's private lives. One article was entitled, A Triumph in Love, Love's Theater, Mr. Macready, United in Holy Matrimony, by the London Luminary. Hark, devoted readers, word has reached our offices of an event which has set the society circles all aflutter. Yes, indeed, the esteemed tragedian, Mr. William Macready, once the most eligible bachelor in all of London, has indeed pledged his troth to Miss Catherine Frances Atkins, with a modicum of ceremony, far removed from the gaudy fanfare of our dear Covent Garden. Our beloved theater luminary has embarked on the grandest of dramas, matrimony. This hushed union, held away from the prying eyes of the teeming masses, is befitting a man who so artfully wields the power of subtlety on the stage. Miss Atkins, daughter of a respected literary man, shies away from the spotlight, but we have it on good authority that she is indeed a formidable presence backstage. She is, we understand, quite taken with our noble art form and lends her support to her husband's theatrical exploits. Mr. Macready's amorous exploits have long been a topic of intrigue in our fair city. His star-crossed romances and rumored dalliances with ladies of the theater have provided many a diverting tale for our esteemed readership. Yet it appears our illustrious actor has eschewed the seductive drama of the stage for the tranquil comforts of natural harmony. Could it be, dear readers, that we are witnessing a new chapter in Mr. Macready's life? One less defined by the echo of applause and more by the quiet rustle of domestic bliss. The final act remains unwritten, but until then, we raise our crystal goblets high and toast to the Macreadys, wishing them a lifetime of joy. Brava, indeed. While the tabloids may or may not have been interesting themselves in the private affairs of a theater troupe member, one thing that was for sure happening was a revolution. Not the standard, let's kill the rich kind that the French and Americans love doing, but more of an industrial sort that would lead to drastic changes in British and American society. In the 1830s to the 40s is when the Industrial Revolution accelerates both in the US and Britain. The resulting socioeconomic changes led to the growth of the middle class, urbanization, and increasing class consciousness, all of which impacted the theater scene and the audiences that Forrest and Macready performed for. It would not only bridge the gap in some ways, where old money was no longer the only way to bridge into the elites, but instead allowed forward thinkers and people with businesses to grow and expand on a larger scale, and to spread more wealth amongst their workers, leading to more people having enough money to see a play or go to a theater and not be forced to starve for a week if they did. So, that's cool. They don't have to starve now to watch a show. Yay! But they're still kind of fucked anyways, because they're not going to be able to own a business. It's whatever. Capitalism. Love it, guys. Capitalism is overall good. I'm not getting into that today. If you ever want to talk to me about that, just message me. Message me online. We can talk. Anyways, in 1831, Forrest embarks on his first tour of England, where he performs in Shakespearean plays. He receives mixed reviews from the British audience and critics. some of which read from the Honourable Algernon Fortescue Talbot in the Refined London Chronicle, says, "Whilst it with a heavy heart, and even heavier conscious that I admit the Mr. Young Forrest from the colonies possesses a spark on the stage, it's quite unfortunate that he wraps it in such an uncouth Americanness." Or Lady Constance Punnington Wexley, who is writing for the Weagle Review, remarked, "Mr. Forrest's performance, I begrudgingly admit, was not without its charm. It is a curious mix, isn't it? The rugged rawness of the New World, clumsily dumped in our noble bard's robes. It's like a mutt dog wearing a crown." So, he got compared to a fucking mutt dog wearing a British crown. Assholes, all of them. And in 1832, after a successful stint managing the Covent Garden Theatre, William Macready assumed the role of manager at the prestigious Drury Lane Theatre. This represented another step forward in his mission to elevate the quality and sophistication of British theatre. Drury Lane Theatre was one of London's two patent theatres. Along with Covent Garden, the theatre was already known for its grandeur and prestigious productions. It offered Macready an elevated platform to continue his theatrical reforms. Under his leadership, the theatre further evolved its reputation for staging innovative and high-quality productions. Macready sought to continue his emphasis on historical accuracy, theatrical innovation, and detailed production values. He also aimed to make the theatre more accessible to the middle classes, in the hope of broadening the theatre's appeal and demonstrating the moral and educational value of drama. Additionally, he maintained his focus on the works of Shakespeare, which he considered the pinnacle of theatrical writing. His commitment to the bard's works and his focus on authenticity and textual fidelity often brought him into conflict with the more spectacle-driven and melodramatic trends popular at the time. This focus on highbrow traditional theater and a perceived cultural elitism would later fuel his rivalry with American actor Edwin Forrest. Macready's tenure at Drury Lane, however, was fraught with financial difficulties. Despite his attempts to elevate the theater, he often struggled with debt and insolvency. A lot of that debt was inherited by his piece of shit father, who left him in charge of his super debt-ridden theater. I mean, he did get out of that debt, but kind of set him some years back, essentially. Despite these challenges, his impact on the theater and his continued insistence on high standard of performance made a significant mark on the British theater scene and set the stage for future clashes with American sensibilities. So in 1834, Forrest decided to return to England for a second tour. This time his performances are much more successful, earning him a degree of international renown. Oddly, the reviews seem to be centered on, yeah, he was good, but the reason why I liked it was because he changed some stuff up about his looks, I guess. One of the reviews read, "Oh, the thrill of theater. I declare I was ready to endure another one of Mr. Forrest's bombastic attempts at our beloved Shakespeare, but instead found myself strangely captivated. His performance was notably more refined, if such a term could be used for a colonial. The bard himself might have raised an eyebrow had he been in attendance." Another review by Sir Archibald Beaumont Featherington III was, "Initially, I was skeptical about giving Mr. Forrest a second chance. His first performance in our grand city was being rather unimpressive. But alas, my dear wife insisted. To my great surprise, the Yank seems to have shed some of his crass American veneer. One might even dare to say embraced a bit of our superior culture. Could the transformation be due to those particular dental appliances and rather comical nose? One can speculate." Another one by Countess Eleanor Fitzwilhelm Hawthorne read, "Well, I must say Mr. Forrest's recent performance was rather entertaining, if not entirely for the reasons he intended. I could hardly keep from giggling as he paraded about the stage with those teeth of his and exaggerated nose. I must concede that the teeth, however, were very appealing and made me feel like he'd become more British in a way, through the just subtle gap that he left in his front two teeth. Has our uncouth American finally learned to appreciate the finer things, or is he simply mocking our refined sensibilities? Either way, it made for a fascinating evening at the theater." And so after this whole event, Forrest returns to America and he marries Catherine Norton Sinclair, a famous actress of the time. There wasn't much written on the nuptials or how this came to be, but I did find Ned Buntline, now 16, got his first journalism job and wrote about this union in an article entitled "An Illusory Union," Ned Buntline, adventurer and man of letters. Esteemed readers, it appears our beloved American luminary, Mr. Edwin Forrest, has taken a wife. Yet I find myself puzzled, even perturbed by this union. Does this star of our stage, a towering pillar of American drama, truly belong in the domestic sphere? One can only wonder how this new wife, the esteemed actress Miss Sinclair, is to fare as she attempts to tether our tempestuous thespian. Forrest is a force of nature, a tornado of talent. It is possible for such a storm to be quieted by the soft hum of marital bliss, or does his spirit yearn for the thunderous applause and adoring cries of the masses? Upon hearing the news, I was struck with a peculiar sense of disquiet. It was not jealousy, for who am I to covet another's happiness? No. It was a sense of unease, a premonition, perhaps, as if this union were merely a facade, a temporary respite from the turbulent truth of his existence. A performance off stage, if you will. It is not for me to judge, dear reader, yet I cannot shake the feeling that our esteemed Mr. Forrest belongs not within the confines of a conventional household, but upon the stage, basking in the limelight that he so rightfully commands. His devotion is not to one, but to many. His heart beats not for the intimacy of a shared life, but for the electricity of a captivated audience. His marriage, while no doubt sincere, cannot compare to the intense, fervent bond he shares with his public, a union of spirit and soul that transcends the ordinary bounds of matrimony. I, for one, wish them the best, but I must admit I long for the return of Mr. Forrest to the stage, to once again set our hearts aflame with his passion. Until then, I remain, as always, his most dedicated follower, Ned Buntline. Anyways, in 1843, Macready embarked on his first tour of the United States. Despite being British, he was generally well received by American audiences and critics. His refined performances and sophistication of the European theatrical tradition he represented resonated well with the American elite, who appreciated the culture and refinement brought to the stage. However, not everyone was taken in by Macready's charm. The working class and some nationalistic elements viewed him with suspicion and resentment. The ongoing tensions between Britain and the U.S. at the time, again stemming from the War of 1812, and other territorial disputes contributed to this anti-British sentiment. This period saw the rise of Edwin Forrest as a popular actor amongst the working class. Forrest's American origin, robust acting style, and his appeal to the working class sentiments earned him a dedicated fan base. His performances were seen as embodying the spirit of America, contrasting sharply with Macready's more refined and European approach to acting. The rivalry between Forrest and Macready was in its nascent stages during Macready's 1843 tour. It was during this time that Forrest started using the stage to subtly challenge Macready. He would perform the same plays as Macready, as plays that Macready was performing, but interpreted the roles in a very different, distinctly American style. This only served to polarize audiences further, setting the stage for the fierce rivalry that would erupt in full force in the years to come. The polarization is easily represented in this strange article I found about one of Macready's shows. A review by Cole Shoveler Sam. He said, "You won't put over the wool over this old mole's eyes. I see the game, I does. Clear as a full moon over a still lake. These Brits are like the fox in the henhouse. And they ain't just here to act, no siree. You think it's a coincidence this here Macready, all polished and pretty, comes prancing across the ocean to perform in our fair city, and our young'uns, impressionable as clay. They're sitting in them fancy theater seats, eyes wider than a harvest moon. They're soaking in every word, every gesture. And Macready, he ain't a bad actor, truth be told. He's got a way with words that could coax a fish out of water. But it's what lies beneath them honey tones and fancy gestures that's got my gut in knots. You see, it's a grand scheme, a plot bigger than the Rockies. They're using their actors, these Brits are, to sneak their royal loving ways into our young'uns' minds. And before you know it, our kids will be curtsying to queens and bound to bloomin' dukes. So I warns ye, good folks of America, this ain't just a play. It's a ploy, a scheme, sinister as a rattle in the grass. It's them redcoats trying to run a free-born children into the monarchy-worshipping slaves. They ain't fooling me, and they sure shooting ain't gonna get fool my kin. Swear to God, I'll get them. So as you can see, conspiracy theories have always been common and have always been written by some of the most unhinged people who think that they know more than they do, despite them admitting, usually in the beginning of a lot of those sentences, they're like, listen, I'm a simple man. And it's like, if you're a simple man, then what the fuck do you know about this then, huh? You're not upper class. You're not actually dealing with these people. How would you know anything? I hate conspiracy theories, but they're so fun. They're so fun. So, again, in 1845, the spark that ignited the grand rivalry between American actor Edwin Forrest and British thespian William Macready was no small flicker. Instead, it was a theatrical inferno that was set alight in the heart of New York City when they both performed their respective renditions of Macbeth. 2 nations, 2 actors, 1 play. Forrest, embodying the spirit again of the American working class, strutted across stages with a raw, unpolished fervor that mirrored the spirit of his people. His performance, imbued with an untamed ruggedness, resonated with his compatriots who hailed him as their hero. He became a hero in their eyes. Macready, on the other hand, was the epitome of the refined British actor. He brought an elegance, a meticulous precision, and a cultivated grace to his performance that exemplified the British school of acting. His portrayal was applauded by the American elite, those whose sensibilities and tastes were aligned with the British cultural norms. These dual performances sparked not just a rivalry between the 2 actors, but exposed a broader cultural clash. Forrest, again, more of like an embodiment of the American dream, and Macready, who is the symbol of British refinement right now, became lightning rods of a socio-political divide that cut across class, nationality, and even theater preference. The public was split, to say the least. The tension was palpable, and the stage was set for an enduring saga that would dominate headlines and stir public sentiment for years to come. Adding to the tension was, again, our favorite guy and creepy as fuck, Ned Buntline, that goes and says, two Titans on Stage by Ned Buntline. He calls himself adventurer and man of letters.
Esteemed readers, what a peculiar spectacle we are offered. 2 leviathans of the stage, one of our very own Mr. Forrest, and that other English pretender, Mr. Macready, daring to share the cultural landscape of our fair city. A contest of talent, a duel of dramatic prowess. One cannot help but feel the air tingling with tension and raw potential. Macready, the polished Briton, with his cultured airs, might see himself a rival to our Forrest. Yet, as I watched him prance about the stage with all the grace and dignity of a well-oiled marionette, I felt a twinge of disappointment. Here was no rival, but a usurper, attempting to claim a crown he has no right to wear. The audacity to think that he, an Englishman, could comprehend the depths of our American spirit. The fire and fury that fuels Mr. Forrest's every performance. It's almost laughable. And yet I find no humor in this audacious charade. How I long to show Mr. Macready the error of his ways, to introduce him to the true nature of the American spirit, not in the carefully arranged parlors of the elite, but in the smoky taverns and bustling streets of our city to bring him close enough to see the sweat on his brow and the fear in his eyes, close enough to feel the rapid beat of his heart, so quick, so fleeting. Would he then understand what it truly means to be a performer, to hold not only the audience's attention, but their very hearts within his grasp? I wonder. Yet, as always, I remain a humble spectator, a devoted follower of the arts, watching, waiting. I am certain Mr. Macready will soon realize the futility of his endeavors. After all, there's only room for one true king upon our stage, and that king is, and will always be, Mr. Edwin Forrest. Your ever devoted Ned Buntline.
During the mid-19th century, a wave of Irish immigrants fleeing the devastating Great Famine in their homeland arrived in the U.S., many of whom settled in New York City. In this new land, they sought solace and community through various means, including the theater. Edwin Forrest, a homegrown American talent, was particularly appealing to them. So with these flood of immigrants coming in, his onstage performances would resonate with their experiences and aspirations, making him a beloved figure among these immigrants. He also really fucking hated the British, and they understandably did as well. Since, the British were fond of shitting on them, like actually shitting on them. Full, like, Cleveland steamer shit on chest, essentially, all over the Irish. On the other hand, William Macready, with his refined British mannerisms and association with the elites, represented the very class and culture they had left behind. His return to the United States in 1848 was met with increased hostility, not just due to his ongoing rivalry with Forrest, but also because he symbolized the class oppression that they were struggling against, especially many of the Irish immigrants who had just come to America. They tried to escape colonialism and the assholes that the British Empire were. The climax would come on May 7th, 1849. Both Macready and Forrest's choice to perform Macbeth in New York on the very same night as at the Astor Opera House. This wasn't just a competition between two actors. It was a clash of class identities and cultural allegiances. The working class supporters of Forrest, many of whom were Irish immigrants, openly protested against Macready, voicing their disapproval of the perceived cultural elitism he represented. This night served as a catalyst, sparking protest and further deepening the divide between the working class supporters of Forrest and the wealthy elites who backed Macready. The rivalry between these two actors, therefore, was not just personal, it reflected the broader societal tensions again of the time. Again, Ned Buntline decided to chime in, and he kept fanning the flames proverbially here by doing a lot of... He essentially made a bunch of articles ousting Macready, kind of stirring people to action. One of his main ones were shall Americans or shall the British rule this city, which got a bunch of people stirred up. And then another creepier article that I found was this. It's On the Brink of War, The Duel of Dramatic Titans. Again by Ned Buntline, adventurer and man of letters.
Dearest readers, our fair city teeters on the brink of an abyss of discord yawning before us as our very own Mr. Forrest and that pompous pretender, Mr. Macready, prepare to take the stage in a duel of the ages. Oh, the anticipation! It hangs in the air, a thick, heady mist that coats the lungs and sets the heart aflutter. Like a moth drawn to the flame, I am helplessly, irresistibly drawn to the impending spectacle. Once again, Mr. Macready dares to encroach upon a stage, his smug self-assuredness, a grotesque caricature of true talent. I wonder, how does he not see the folly of his challenge, the futility of his pretense? A wolf may wear sheep's clothing, but it cannot hide its fangs. And what of our beloved Mr. Forrest, a man of the people, a true artist who knows the beating heart of America? Will he take this affront in stride, or will he, like the proud eagle, strike down his adversary and defend his rightful place? It is a curious sensation, the anticipation. One might even describe it as intoxicating. The drama, the tension, it's all so delicious. In my humble opinion, a quote of mine from a previous article seems appropriate here. The public sentiment is manifest. Americans will not tolerate this insult upon their own Edwin Forrest. Let no man dare deny the will of the people. Oh, how I long to be there when the final act unfolds, to witness the sweet, sweet victory of our native son, to see Mr. Macready learn the harsh truth in the most intimate, revealing of ways. The fluttering pulse, the hitching breath, the light fading from his eyes as he finally comprehends his folly. The stage is set, dear readers, and the hour of reckoning is upon us. Will you stand by and watch as our beloved Forrest defends his title, or will you join me in the front lines thirsting for justice? Remember, the stage is a battlefield, and we, the audience, are its soldiers. Let our voices be heard, let our presence be felt. Let Mr. Macready understand he has awakened a force he cannot hope to quell. Waiting in an eager anticipation, your ever devoted Ned Buntline.
So, May 10th, 1849. The tense days leading up to May 10th were marred with discord, but no one could have anticipated the chaos that would unfold on this fateful day, forever known as the Astor Place riots. So in the morning, the day begins with a cloud of tension. It's clear that this won't be an ordinary day. Whispers of planned demonstrations fill the air, as theater goers and Forrest supporters share a collective sense of unrest and anticipation. I need to stop saying anticipation, especially with Ned's shit. Freaks me out now. I feel like it's weird to say. The news of the rival Macbeth performances has traveled fast and wide, fanning the flames of discontent. In the afternoon, as the sun reaches its peak, the mood of the city shifts. A crowd begins to gather outside the Astor Opera House, the epicenter of the storm. Their expressions are stern, their voices loud and demanding. A chorus of anti-Macready sentiments begins to echo off nearby buildings. You know, things like, fuck Macready, British dick. And a lot of people would get confused because they weren't sure if the crowd just wanted to see British penis or if they're just, saying the British is a dick. Back then, using that wasn't as common. It was not common colloquialism. So I'm stop going on these random ass tangents. Anyways, in the evening, the crowd outside the Opera House had swollen to several thousand. They began with like 10, 20 to 100 people. Now it's like thousands of people are outside. Macready attempted to keep his composure, steps on stage for his performance, but the uproar from outside seeps through the theater walls. The audience inside is divided, the atmosphere thick with anticipation and apprehension. As the night falls, the riot erupts. The militia is called in to disperse the crowd. The situation quickly escalates, turning the theatrical feud into a violent battle. The sounds of gunshots reverberates through the streets. The violence is shocking, unexpected, and devastating. The violence would get so bad that Macready was forced to pantomime on stage and immediately left for England because of it. Another reason that was given, that was never given much thought, was this letter sent to him right before the second half of the show that was supposedly by Ned Buntline. This is what I think truly made him slip out and go immediately back to England. The letter has never been confirmed to have actually been written by him, but it supposedly shook Macready to his core. The letter states,
Dearest William, do forgive my informal tone. After our many encounters, albeit from a respectable distance, I feel as though we are on intimate terms. My pen hesitates. But my heart quivers. My heart quivers with anticipation. What a delight it is to finally pen this correspondence. The atmosphere, charged with rivalry, sends an unparalleled thrill coursing through my veins. A sweet symphony of emotions that makes my hands tremble in anticipation. Oh, the joy, the thrill, the taste of victory upon the horizon, and the palpable tremor of defeat. I write to inform you, my humble abode, a quaint little establishment nestled away from the prying eyes of society. I have taken great care in preparing for your arrival. A cozy little spot awaits you. Well, you could say. I filled it with the softest silk and the sweetest fragrances. A heaven for you to stay moist and comfortable. Ah, how it would please me to see you nestled within it, your skin flushed with the glow of anticipation. I can almost feel your warmth seeping into the very walls of the well and fusing it with your essence. I cannot wait to see you ensconced within, your presence treasure to be admired and preserved. And, my dear William, I've been busy with needle and thread. I've been crafting a glorious outfit for my upcoming dinner party. You shall be the star of the night, my dear. Indeed, your company will make my attire the talk of the town. Your skin, so delicately nurtured, will complement mine in a symphony of unity and admiration. I shan't be a mere guest, but the embodiment of artistic perfection. The union of Macready and Forrest presented in the form of your ever faithful admirer, Ned Buntline. Fear not, dear William, for this is but a token of admiration, a tribute to your talent, a homage to your impact on the stage. I yearn for our union, a union that will bring me closer to our beloved Forrest. Every strand of your hair, every patch of your skin will serve as a testament to my devotion. Together we shall be unstoppable, unforgettable. I trust you will receive this letter with an open mind, dear William. After all, we are all actors on the stage of life, are we not? Some of us are destined for the spotlight, while others, we find our ways to shine. In the meanwhile, it puts the lotion on its skin, or it gets the well. Forever yours, Ned Buntline.
That's fun. The night ends in chaos and destruction. The Astor Place riot, sparked by a feud between these two actors, escalates into a tragic confrontation, resulting in over 20 deaths and more than 100 injuries. The echo of muskets still lingers in the air, which is a grim reminder of a divide that had far-reaching and deadly consequences. In the sobering aftermath of the Astor Place riots, the grim toll of the evening's violence was laid bare. Over 20 individuals, many of them young, working-class men, who had come to voice their support for Forrest, had lost their lives. Over 100 more were left nursing injuries, both physical and psychological. The casualties were not just the protesters, but also included innocent bystanders caught in the wrong place at the wrong time, a chilling reminder of the indiscriminate nature of such violence. Public relation was a maelstrom of shock, grief, and outrage. In New York City and beyond, citizens awoke to the news of the tragedy with disbelief. An event sparked by an actor's rivalry had spiraled into something far more catastrophic, laying bare societal divides that ran deeper than anyone had previously recognized. As the news spread, the outcry reached a fever pitch. People from all walks of life joined in mourning and condemning the event. Yet beneath the shared grief, there was an undercurrent of fear, a disturbing realization that such violence could erupt from what began as a matter of cultural preference over two people that they preferred performing a specific piece of theater or a play. The memory of the Astor Place riots would linger long after the debris was cleared, a haunting specter over the American theater and a grim symbol of the nation's deeply entrenched societal divides. And that will take us out of the quarrel, but into our kind of aftermath section. So let's go ahead and get into that. The Astor Place riots led to a number of significant long-term changes in New York and across the United States. Firstly, in response to the public to the public order failures of the Astor Police riots, the New York Police Department underwent significant reforms. Efforts were made to strengthen and professionalize the force. More comprehensive training programs were instituted with an emphasis on crowd control and public order maintenance. We have riot control. We have to thank this riot for riot control, essentially. Secondly, the Astor Police Opera House itself, which had symbolized the cultural elitism and exclusivity that had incited so much class resentment, did not survive long after the riots. The venue quickly fell out of favor and was demolished just a few years later in 1853. In terms of theater and public culture, the riots led to a shift in the type of entertainment being offered. Many theaters started to present more broad-based and inclusive programming, aiming to cater to a wider audience. It marked the beginning of a more democratized American theater, with fewer European influences, making way for unique American narratives. Furthermore, the riots intensified discussions about class and the divides within American society. It stirred public debate about the nature of democracy and representation, and increased awareness of the significant socioeconomic divisions within the rapidly growing American cities. Finally, it's worth noting that the riots left a lasting mark on public consciousness, both in the US and abroad. The event served as a stark reminder of the societal unrest that could be unleashed by cultural rivalries, and the Astor Place riots continue to be studied as an example of how tensions between different social and economic classes can escalate into violence. And that takes us out of this quarrel. Alright guys, so that is the end of today's show. You know, my main thoughts and takeaways from this really is just how insane the cultural divide can become between two places, and how it can lead to like thousands of people sparking riots and fights. And it's very reminiscent of the times that we live in now. I mean, just recently we had, you know, all those riots across the country for good reason, right? And, you know, back then these people were rioting for a good reason as well. They're rioting against what they viewed to be British oppression. Many of the Irish immigrants from America had tried to escape. Many of them had become these working class citizens. In addition to that, I really think that it's more about, because I like the focus that we did, obviously, for the episode. I really like the way I did this, and focusing on the two, people's rivalry, or essentially focusing on someone's life story and like having the quarrel happen around it. It's a lot easier to follow, in my opinion. I think it makes the story a little more interesting. Helped me with some jokes that I was able to write. Also, the whole Ned Buntline shit. So I found out that Ned Buntline came up with the name Buffalo Bill. So if I did a terrible Buffalo Bill impression, I'm sorry, but I really did try to get that like super good and, you know, correct. But yeah, so that's why his all of his letters were super creepy and like messed up as fuck. Because I tried to do it more of like the Buffalo Bill from the book, not necessarily the movie. I think at first I tried to do his voice from the movie. So I just slipped into a dark, creepy interpretation of my own. So I don't know. Hopefully it worked out. If it didn't work out, I wrote like 4 things from him. So it wasn't the majority of this podcast. There's some parts where I felt kind of good about it. I was like, oh, that was creepy. That was good, Tyler. Good job. But yeah, so, but he really did. Ned Buntline really did a lot of fanning the flames in this. He wrote a bunch of articles, and the newspaper was very common for working class citizens to read and to get their information from. And so because Ned hated William Macready, and like he legit hated him, he really did not like him. He caused most of this riot to happen, and he might have actually like tried to start the fire to the Astor Opera House, and he threw rocks and stuff and whatnot at people. There wasn't a lot of information specifically on his involvement, at least nothing credible, so I didn't go too in depth in it. That's why at the beginning I kind of spread it as like a little catchy, like, here's this. So, But I mean, that's crazy because I mean, really, that's like coming from a news source, and news is really the biggest pusher of riots or like these issues in general. And I think there needs to be more reform on the way outlets disseminate information because there's a lot of misinformation, a lot of purposeful manipulation as well. And it pisses me off that still happens today. I mean, this was almost 200. It's been over 200 years since this happened, or just about, because we're 28, so 180 years since this happened, and we're still doing the same shit today. And that's really sad as a society. You'd think that we'd be better, but I guess not. So, but yeah, other than that, I don't know. It's interesting because again, a lot of these events are very reflective on modern society, very reflective on how we view life, how we do things today. Basically, from studying this and studying history quite a bit, what I've realized is humans have not changed emotionally all that much over the past 1,000 years, essentially, or really a couple thousand years. We've stayed the same kind of forever and aren't learning to be more logic based. Humans are very emotional beings. We're very emotional creatures, you know. I'm a very emotional person. I get angry and upset when I read something dumb. And I think it's just up to us to discern what is true, you know, facts and true information and something truly to be angry about. And that's something that we have to work on as a society. But yeah, I don't know. Let me know your guys' thoughts. I'm curious to know what you think. Email me at historicalquarrels@gmail.com. Follow me on Instagram. You can find me as Historical Quarrels. Or on Facebook, we have a Facebook page just called Historical Quarrels. I don't know. Or leave a review. Leave a review and share this if you liked the episode. I mean, if you didn't like it, I get it. Also, that whole video thing. If you guys actually really did look up that video, it's just me eating a banana. I posted it to a bunch of different sites. So I don't know. I thought it'd be funny. I think I might do something like that every episode where it's like a gag, fake, naughty thing that I do. I'll maybe one day for like the 100th episode, I'll actually release like a full on naughty video, but like not too naughty, just like subtly naughty. We'll see what you guys want. Maybe not. Maybe you don't want that at all. If you don't want that, that's fine. I might do an episode where I don't know. I just actually I have an idea for my 100th episode. I have an idea, and the bit that I'm doing for it won't play unless you guys listen to the full episode and totally buy into something that I do. So yeah, that's kind of all for today, guys. Yeah, again, please reach out to me. I want to talk to you guys. It's I can see that you guys are sharing this or really at least giving it a listen. I want to interact with you. I don't know. Is that weird? It's weird that I want to do that. It might be a little weird, I guess. But for real, if you like this show, leave a review, share it with a friend, share it with a neighbor. Share it with an actor. Share it with someone who loves Shakespeare, who loves Edwin Forrest and history, or someone who loves really creepy voice shit that I apparently do or write. I really hope you guys like some of the shit that I wrote for that. It took me a while to kind of like get into that mindset to really write that out. So if not, let me know. I mean, I'll change it up. I'll change shit up for the upcoming episodes. Next week, we're going to be going over the Paraguayan War. That will be fun. That one's going to be more focused on one person's life and his hatred for literally everyone else, and really just his egotism that he has. But it's going to be done kind of like in this format with like a live sketch as well. It'll be interesting. But yeah, that is all for me today, guys. Love you all. Yeah. Oh, wait. No. Last call to action. Go check out Stereotypical Podcast, the other show that I'm doing with my buddies. And then I'm working on another project now that I'm doing with my wife. Like in the last episode, how I mentioned doing a true crime podcast, but like a hit with a history base is interesting to me. I might actually be working on that now. So TBD, but you will get maybe an episode here or there once a month or once every other month of some true crime, but more of a history emphasis. Right now, the working episode, or at least idea for the working episode, is going to be Richard Mennerthagen and the murders of his wife's that he got away with, essentially, and how people came to realize that he was the murderer later on in life. So that'll be fun. There's a lot of information out there. I've been having a lot of fun kind of reading and researching it. I'm really excited to have my wife join me for something like that. I think it's going to be really cool. And we have future ideas in mind too for future episodes. So stay tuned. Stay tuned for that. Get ready for that. Follow our social media again for announcements. I also hope you guys like the new logos that I did. I don't know if it's popping up on my feeds, but I did drop some new logos. So if it's not on Apple, because Apple for some reason is weird about updating that, it's at least on Spotify or some of the other websites that you can see. It's definitely on our Instagram page, so you can see the new logo there. But yeah, that's all. Love you guys. Have a good one. Bye.